Sean, some of the other coaches y'all have faced have just kind of referenced Dennis Allen pushing the right buttons with that defense, and I was just curious what you thought his role is and how they're playing right now.
Listen, I think. Listen, I've known Dennis for a long time. He was on our original staff in 06. He's smart. He's detailed. He works at it. His staff, those guys have all. The thing that's most pleasing is to see the progress from week one to where we're at now. And listen, I'm glad I have him. I'm glad we have him.
Coach, what challenges does Jalen Hurts pose for the Saints defense?
Well, look, number one, his mobility, his ability to run. There's a dual threat. There's a little bit of that unknown. He's got a really good arm. He can throw the ball down the field. And so sometimes, maybe a little bit like Taysom, there's some off-schedule plays that you don't necessarily get a chance to simulate. But if it breaks down and he's outside the pocket, he's someone that can beat you with his feet and his arm. So, I think those are the things that come to mind right away.
Sean, run blocking for wide receivers isn't, I guess, necessarily like probably something they all like dream of doing, right? When they get in the NFL, do you have to like identify that trait in a guy like with Traquan especially, and just seems like he just approaches that with some eagerness.
Well, I think there's some carryover. Corners need to be able to tackle, receivers need to be able to block. Certainly, there are better blocking receivers with each team we play. There's certain receivers that are called upon to do more of the work, and yet it's hard to run the football at an explosive level if you're not at some point being able to block the safeties and the safety force patterns. So I think in our league, that's real important.
And then Teron's been back at practice. James Hurst seems like he did a pretty good job filling in, but what does Teron bring to the team when he's out there healthy playing?
Yeah, look, it's good to have him back, and I'm glad we've got that flexibility because it's been maybe sometimes a tackle, sometimes a guard, and I think that you don't take that for granted, because there's been seasons where, man, you're required to chip, and I think that it's good having him back though.
Sean, what kind of progress is Zach Bond making just throughout the season?
He's doing well. His role in special teams has increased. Obviously, he's getting snaps in our base defensive packages. He's a good football player, and I'm glad we have him. So, a lot of it sometimes is opponent driven, how much he's on the field in defense based on our packages. And then I'm pleased with how he's playing in the kicking game.
From an offensive perspective, when you're looking at a defense that can play different linebackers in base, and then they got their nickel linebackers, what challenges does that create? Challenges just trying to identify who's out there?
No, look, every week when we play, we see teams that have their base package, and let's just say that's 3 linebackers, and that's sometimes dictated but by what we're in. And then if we get into a receiver heavy set, a lot of times we'll get a nickel, possibly even a dime defense. So when we game plan, I think you kind of understand, generally speaking, this is not always, but one linebacker comes off, and then a DB comes in, a nickel or a buffalo. So you see that on film. I think the challenges sometimes are the defenses that, we saw this in Denver, where you might get base to your 3 receiver sets. And so that presents some challenges. but I think from an ID standpoint, the quarterbacks, the offense gets used to understanding, what personnel groups are going to see their base defense, what personnel groups are going to see their nickel or dime packages. And each week there can be some nuances there.
Sean, I know we talk about, what might happen to an offense if the quarterback has to, change, but are there certain nuances that become difficult for your center, for Eric, in terms of cadence or those kinds of things?
Well, it's a good question. I think we try to replicate the cadence as best we can, and certainly it's not exact. So that's not just the center, that's everyone involved, closer to the ball that hears the snap. I think, I've said this before, Drew in his 15th season is uncanny relative to his ability to communicate all the specifics maybe. And I think when he's out last year with Teddy and now with Taysom, that some others have to pick up some of that, that you can't expect all the details that you got from someone as experienced as Drew. And so, your front identification, that has to all take place. But the point I'm making is, though, when you change the signal caller, there's a number of things that are different.
This is y'all's third game in a row on the road. Sometimes that happens just with scheduling quirks, but how, I guess, different is that when you're trying to, just get in your rhythm of stuff, but you're on the road for 3 weeks in a row, and that's not a normal situation?
Yeah, I think, look, generally speaking, we've been on this recently, this Sunday, not an evening schedule. And so, we've had the 1 o'clock or 12 noon slot, maybe the afternoon, this weekend, it'll be the second set of games. I don't mind the traveling. I think this season, uniquely different than any other, is some of the biggest road challenge is your cadence and your crowd noise and all of those other things. And we're playing in a much different environment right now. And I think, look, the visiting teams' win percentage this year is up. And I think that plays a part in it, because you're really in I don't want to say a sterile environment, but a quiet environment that's not challenging from a noise perspective. But as far as traveling, I think when the schedule comes out, we don't look at it like 3 away games. We might look at it like, all right, Philly in December, what's the weather going to be like? And while we're on that topic, I think we're going to get, fairly decent weather this time of the year. I think that's how we look at it a little bit more than just 3 away games. You kind of look at when you're playing someone. And then the other thing is, you really can't have any control over that. And so you just look, obviously if we're playing 3 on the road in a row, then we're getting that back somehow, at home. So it kind of is what it is.